So here I am playing Trackmania again. It's been a week since I recorded my last Poddy Vlogcast. And I figured I'd do one again. Because these are fun and nice. Doing an obstacle course right now, a green track. I think the 6th track under the green banner. Yeah, it doesn't really matter all that much. I figured I'd talk about a mobile app I've been using a lot lately. It's called Oyster. It's developed by a team called Team OX. And it's a kind of travel app, I suppose. It keeps track of every single GPS location you've ever been since you've installed it. As long as you keep it turned on. So it basically draws all kinds of white lines on the map, showing you exactly where you have been thus far. So it's really cool. It's quite fun to watch as you happen to walk or drive to places, how it all fills out. So at first it's just your home or your workplace, and then you move between those two. You might go to the store and you see a white line go from your home to your store exactly through the path you may walk or drive, etc. This app has a lot of advantages for me. It's really appealing to me. I just barely made that jump. I am doing nicely. Let me just get this jump. Oh no, that was wrong. That was right. Oh god, well, I got silver, I think. So yeah, what can we do with this app? So one of the things that it does is that it actually makes it a lot easier for me to visualize what the world looks like. How I am moving between any two locations, what kind of paths I'm taking. I've always had a lot of difficulty navigating and remembering where things are in comparison to each other. That's also one of the difficulties. I always get lost when I'm driving a car. I get lost constantly. So this actually helps me contextualize the realness of the world. Because every time I walk or drive somewhere, I look at the app, maybe while I'm driving, which is not a good idea. Usually, of course, after I got there, and I see exactly what kind of path I took and how I drove or how I walked. And it just gives me a lot of context about what is where and how did I get where I went. Wow, I actually made a 360 there and I managed to get gold anyway. Hilarious. Oops. So that's really one of the most important things for me, that it allows me to keep track of where everything is, and it makes it so much easier for me to not get lost. Way more so than just looking at a map, because now I'm actually seeing the path I'm taking, and whenever I take the wrong path somewhere, be it on purpose or accidentally, I can exactly see what I've been doing, what I did wrong, what I did right, what I did. It's just really nice for me. One of the things this app does is also it kind of gives an explicit meaning, a kind of gamification to what you would usually might give some kind of inherent meaning. Like adventuring and going from place to place and seeing the world, it's often seen as something that kind of has an inherent meaning, you know? Of course, just visiting a country you've never been to is the most obvious thing for this. But even just going to a different story that you've never been to before, going to a different... Whenever you go somewhere you've never been before, it kind of has a kind of inherent meaning to it as a human. It's a bit difficult to define. And what this app does is it basically makes this kind of meaning explicit by gamifying it. In part because the app keeps track of experience and levels, so the more you move around, the higher level you get eventually. Currently I'm level 28 in this app. My brother's 26, he's also playing it. It's quite a lot of fun to race him, I suppose, which, it's kind of gamifying of adventure, gamifying of going places you've never been before, gamifying of seeing the world. But another way in which it does this is by having a kind of fog of war effect, because it basically fills in a bit of a white line around wherever you've been. So eventually, when you move around a lot in one area, you might find that specific area, like maybe a town square-esque thing, or around your own home or a parking lot, you'll find that that's completely covered with white lines. And it just feels like a fog of war in a video game. And it's so much fun to fill it all out. And I've really taken that to this extreme myself, really, where I'm walking through alleyways around my house, just trying to get rid of any black spots that are left around this area. And I found myself thinking about how to get certain house blocks. Because, the center of every house block is like this dark spot that I just have a lot of difficulty filling in. And you kind of have to either find the right alleyways or somehow get into the yard of a house or something like that. Which is also kind of an issue. I've also realized how many schools actually exist around me, because I'm not going to get too close to them, of course, for obvious reasons. So it basically makes you, it recontextualizes the world around you. And that's really important to me. It basically creates an entirely separate layer onto the world on which you can view the world, and what kind of freedom I have within the world, where I can go, where I can't go, why, what reasons. Sometimes there isn't anything legally stopping me. There's no reason for me not to go into this dead-end alleyway, but there is a social aspect to it where I would just look really weird to walk into an alleyway and then walk out again and look at my phone the whole time, and people would be thinking like, what the fuck are you doing, Mabel? So there's also a balance there, but it's also just kind of an inherently interesting thing to it. It's, as I said, it basically creates an entirely separate layer on top of the real world. And I really value that. And that's why I find this app so interesting. Other similar app ideas I was interested in is maybe an app that keeps track of any minor monument I've ever been at. I haven't been able to find something like that. Pokemon Go kinda does this with Pokemon gyms and Pokestops, but it doesn't really do it the way I would like to, where it really puts another layer onto the real world. But this app, that literally just keeps track of everywhere I've ever been, it really does kind of change the game for me. I'm really, really happy I found it.